I didn't want this to be a thing, but apparently it's going to make itself be a thing as I wear this hat to cover up the badness of my hair. So until the hair grows out and it looks half decent, this will be a thing. So anyway, yes, hello and welcome to You Should Be Reading. Today on You Should Be Reading The Martian. The Martian is a 2014 novel by Andy Weir, and it's a sci-fi-ish book that has a very interesting publishing history, in that the book's author, Andy Weir, he originally wrote it as an online book, and not even an e-book before it was ever an e-book. It was a book that he was writing on his website, releasing in chapters and increments over time, constantly updating it, along with the people who were reading it, to try and, get feedback from the stuff that he was writing and to further sharpen up his research on the stuff that he was writing about, and also as a way of like a writing exercise, constantly challenging himself to see how he can get his character of Mark Watney in The Martian out of the situations that he puts him in. Like, Andy Weir seems to have written himself into one corner, then another corner, then another corner, after another throughout the entire book, and it constantly has to try and challenge himself to think, how can I get Mark Watney out of this new situation that I put him in? And I think that's basically what happened. My knowledge of the whole publishing history and all that kind of stuff is a bit patchy, admittedly, but I think that's pretty much the gist of the whole thing. And then he published it as an ebook and sold it on Amazon and became very popular, and then he got a proper publishing deal to get it turned into an actual book with pages and the like, And then it all happened very quickly, got published in 2014, last year, and then the rights to the whole thing got snapped up by 20th Century Fox, and then it got turned into a film by Ridley Scott, and now we already have the film out this year, right now, with Matt Damon in it. Matt Damon has to be done. And yes, but before you go and see the film, before I see the film in fact, and before I possibly review it, depends on if I get the chance to go out and see it, we should definitely talk about the book first. Especially because I just finished reading it recently, so the whole timing of this whole thing is very timely, yes. So The Martian, let's start off with saying that it's fucking amazing. Like, we have to get that out of the way first, because it's so true. And it's very important that it's known that it's fucking amazing, because it so much, very much is. And it's just so much feels by the end that you don't want it to end, and you're like, what is my life now? Why don't I get to spend more time with Mark Watney? It's finished. Ugh. And, it does that to you. I mean, if you like books and reading books, you probably have that happen to you a lot with the book withdrawal feels. The Martian is so good because, where do we start with why it's so good? Okay, let's start with how it really makes you appreciate science and people who are scientists and who understand science and who are able to comprehend maths and science and the whole problems inherent in each, and able to solve equations and any of that kind of stuff. Bravo to those people, very much so. I don't know how they do it, because I can't understand a fucking thing about it. My brain just goes blah whenever any science or math related stuff happens to be discussed. After all, in my GCSEs I got a D in maths, so what does that tell you? And the book does really help make you appreciate how smart these people are and how much we should appreciate how clever they are, because Mark Watney, in the story of him being stranded on Mars and having to find a way to survive long enough to be able to have someone get him back to Earth, the whole book is a constant barrage of him having to solve one problem after another, such as having to make water and have enough food to live. And the way that he has to make water by burning oxygen and hydrogen and causing fire, and it's not a very good idea, and having to grow potatoes through very very nice means, number twos. It's that kind of thing where it's one scientific problem to be solved after another. And the whole book is filled with numbers and calculations and scientific explanations, and it's all like The book has the slight fault that you don't imagine that if he really was Mark Watney, if he was really typing his logs into a log, that he would explain all of these things in great detail, because you would imagine that he would imagine that anyone reading what he's writing would already know the stuff that he's talking about. And that's just a small narrative flaw. It's a thing so that the book makes sense and that it's readable and it's forgivable. It's just lots of stories do it that are great, and I don't mind it at all. And I really need it because I need the science dumbed down for me, because I am really a Dumbo. What was that? That was far too goofy for me. Goofy? Dumbo? Lots of Disney characters today. Anyway, the book just really goes full throttle on all the smart stuff, and having Mark Watney and everyone on Earth who eventually finds out that he's on Mars, having to solve all these problems one after the other, and the biggest limitation they all have is time. And, you know, it's fitting that Matt Damon is playing Mark Watney, and he was in Interstellar, which was also very much obsessed with time and how it affects everything and how it makes everything limited and much more difficult. And also Matt Damon in that film was playing a guy stranded on a planet for years, but everyone already knows that, and even he keeps saying it in interviews and stuff. But regardless, the book itself is just one big, oh my god, how is Mark going to get out of this? And oh my god, how are they going to do this thing to get to Mark? And it's really stressful. The biggest stressful thing of all is whenever the book turns from first person into third person, and whenever it does that narrative prose telling switcheroony, that's when you get really tense, because whenever it goes to third person, that's when things get really bad, really fast, and you freak the fuck out. And it's a very tense read, even with all the science and math stuff going on, of course. The other thing that makes the book so great is how optimistic it is, how much it's like, we are going to solve these problems, we are going to work through it, we're going to do this thing because we need to, because we are hopeful that we can do this and be successful. And it's like, I read it the whole thing all the time being like, yeah, if I was on Mars, I would give the fuck up and I would fall into a deep pit of despair and I would die. But Mark Watney is nothing like that, because he just keeps being like, no, I'm not fucking giving up. I'm going to solve this fucking problem because I'm not going to let Mars fucking defeat me. So I'm going to be sciencing the shit out of all of this, and that's what makes him so awesome, that he just keeps on keeping on, as well as all the people on Earth who are trying to get Mark Watney back alive, having to solve all their problems and working together, and everyone being like, we need to get Mark Watney home. And when I went into the reading of the book, not knowing anything about it, I had this, like, what's the word for it? I went into it thinking that the book was probably going to be some sort of, like, cynical, satirical sort of thing, where Mark Watney would be left on Mars, and then when Earth finds out about it, they might either like cover it up, that he's left up there, or maybe people stop giving a shit because so much time passes, and then eventually nobody cares anymore. And I thought it was going to be like that it was going to be very bitterly edged and satirical and all that, like a Paul Verhoeven satirical film. But no, not in the slightest. It's like, you know, 60s original Star Trek optimistic. It's 50s gee whiz, science is good. That kind of attitude to the whole thing. And it's just so good and refreshing in our age of so many films having the cynical, bitter edge to them. And admittedly, I do love a lot of them. Most of them. Some can be too cynical and bitter for me, but you get the whole thing of, like, Man of Steel having that whole brooding edge to it. Thinking that it's being Christopher Nolan-esque, but even Christopher Nolan films do have humour in them. People seem to forget that, but that's beside the point. The point is that it's refreshing in the book that it is so optimistic, that it is so much like humans will do what they can to help other humans, that we want to help each other. We are good, and we are good at solving problems because we have science, and we're good at science, at least some of us are, those who are smart enough to know what science stuff is and can understand it, and we can use them people to help the rest of us out, and that kind of thing. And it's so refreshing to read something that is that optimistic, especially when someone like me is reading it thinking that it's all going to be glass half empty, and it's going to be like, everyone's going to forget about him, it's all going to be shit, and it's all going to be bitter, and Mark Watney's going to die and fall into despair because of him, you know, facing his inevitable demise. Because that's just my outlook. If I was stranded on Mars, that's how I know I would just not cope with it, because I would fall victim to just boredom. That's one of the biggest things in the book, is just how much boredom he has to go through, how much patience straining tediousness he has to go through to do one thing after another, because so much of what he has to do to solve his problems involves having to wait for ages. And that's not something that I'm good with. I'm patient to an extent, but there is a point in which I'm like, I cannot wait anymore. Boredom is too much for me. I have to do something or I'll lose my mind. And Mark Watney is the complete antithesis of that attitude that I have, apparently. And the other great thing about the book, the greatest thing about it, is that it's so fucking funny. It's hilarious. It makes you literally LOL multiple times, literally laugh out loud. My favourite part, I mean, I have many favourite parts, many favourite quips and lines that are littered throughout the book. My favourite bit is this one line that's literally just 2 words, and it's NASA, semicolon, beginning quote, dick, full stop, end quote. I don't know why I love that bit so much, but I just do. And I do want it on a t-shirt. In fact, here it is on a t-shirt. Now somebody get onto making that, because I'm not making it, because I don't have the right to, because, you know, it's Andy Weir's words and I would get into trouble, but that's not the point. I don't have merch. I'm not that popular, as we've established in the past, but the point of it is that the book is funny, it's smart, it's refreshingly optimistic, it's awesome, and you should definitely read it if you haven't already. Read it before you see the film, read it after you've seen the film, read it instead of the film, whatever. Just make sure that you do read the film. Read the book. You can't read a film, you have to watch a film. What are you talking about, Jack, for God's sake? But the point is, The Martian is a book that is here behind me, and it's very good. And you should be reading it, because that's what the title of this video is. And, yes. So, at some point I should probably go and see The Martian so I can review the film and compare and contrast it to the book and see which is better. It'll probably be the book, let's face it. And, yeah, we'll see how it goes. And I hope that I've, you know, inspired you, made you want to read the book, if you haven't already read the book. And, yeah, whatever. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Bye-bye. And, oh god, I hope this hat goes away soon.